the angel apostasy.
The courtly crowd jumped and gasped at the sound as the massive metal monstrosity met stone. For the first time, Perturabo looked as something other than an immaculate agent of the divine. His thick hair twisted wildly, wet with sweat. An odorous miasma followed him. Unnatural pheromones clawed at the minds of onlookers, eliciting animalistic fear and reverence in equal measure. Besides his eyes, cold and implacable as ever, there was subtle tiredness in his posture that almost appeared mortal. Perturabo gestured at his captured quarry. "Here lies the heart of your woes. A technological marvel, as ancient as it is advanced. Both reaper of countless men and a vessel to beyond the heavens, yet still only a machine. Your curse, tyrant of Lokos, has been lifted." Dammekos, ever the consummate statesman, did not gibber in wonder at the legendary relic before his eyes, like some lesser man. Only a flare of his nostrils, a tilted-back head and slightly widened eyes gave away his true feelings, and only to Perturabo. Dammekos swallowed and stood. "Perturabo, most blessed by the gods, you have completed every task asked of you, and with this you have served not only me, but all of Olympia." Dammekos, ever the consummate statesman, did not gibber in wonder at the legendary relic before his eyes, like some lesser man. Only a flare of his nostrils, a tilted-back head and slightly widened eyes gave away his true feelings, and only to Perturabo. Dammekos swallowed and stood. "Perturabo, most blessed by the gods, you have completed every task asked of you, and with this you have served not only me, but all of Olympia." The crowd cheered at their hero. Many screamed all the louder to release their pent-up tension. Dammekos waited until it began to die down, and slowly lifted his hands, ushering the calm before taking on a somber demeanor. "As word reached me of your success, I immediately focused the vast resources at my disposal toward finding your brother. The findings were immediate and devastating." Dammekos's eyelids half closed as his eyes drifted to the side. Creased lines cut down both sides of his mouth, turning down the edges of his lips, but not quite frowning. "Hector had come to Lokos, but never before me. I am told he had come seeking Caliphone to court her. My beloved eldest son, Heracon, the fool, had taken offense to the low shepherd's daring. In an attempt to jealousy guard his sister, he had seized Hector. He had been in my own dungeon without my knowledge the whole time." He spoke the last words indignantly, and then with great sorrow. "The moment I found out I had all those involved, barring the fool, executed and Hector's guard's tongue cut out. Lying by omission is no less foul a crime. While it breaks my heart, Heracon's treachery will be met out the same as the rest involved, just with more formal proceedings." Perturabo stood stock straight, turning on his statuesque glamour with an added stillness that took the breath out of the room. He breathed loud and slow through his nose. With wide eyes and a mouth threatening a snarl, he spoke 3 words carefully. "Where is he?" He was in no shape to be moved, lest we threaten his precious life, so I did my best to make him most comfortable in the... Dammekos was cut off as Perturabo ran. Perturabo had made his way to the open cell to find an emaciated husk in bed, surrounded by flickering artificial light. With visible pain, its head slowly turned to meet him. It was as if someone had stretched his brother's face over a skull. "Oh, Hector." "Perturabo," Hector wheezed out. "You saved me again." "What happened?" "I thought I could do better for us all. We are more than herders. Mother whispered stories of the old days where father's grandfather sat the throne. A king's physician, surely they could. It was worth a chance to save Mother." Hector's words came slower now. "So I came, but I barely entered the city before I hadn't even seen her." Hector coughed weakly in bony hands. His wrists were bloody raw and hot with infection. "Did you see what happened? Who abducted you?" "No. I was walking, and it all went black. I woke up in the dark. My head throbbed. It had been days, weeks in the dark, with only the wall moisture to lap up." He choked his words. "That was until the bald pig of a guard came. Every other day, he would toss this rancid slop my way and repeat the same words. Herakan sends his regards." Perturabo could taste the sickness on his words, and heard his breath grow shallow as he went on. He gently scooped up Hector's hand. "My brother, I was too long. I failed you." Perturabo's face was a study in anguish. "I should have looked for you myself. So much time wasted on these snakes!" He bit back his rage. "And satiating my curiosity. No, my ego. It was my choice. You came. You came and did so much. For all of us. I know it's not all easy for you. I see how hard you try. I just wanted to be like you, to provide, to help. You look so hard on the outside." Hector's hand shakily reached up and tapped Perturabo's chest plate with the back of his knuckles. "But on the inside, you're just as soft. As soft as a..." Hector's hand fell away. For the first and only time, Perturabo wept. He was not permitted to grieve long, as the sound of the cell door slamming behind him pulled his mind ahead of his woeful heart. He ran through his subconscious memory like long-term storage. He heard no trace of a footstep, but the sound of the slightest metallic thunk hinted at an automated switch on the cell door. Working through the possibilities, his mind kept returning to the memory of cornering and capturing the cerulean rind for its iridescent horns. He was being hunted. Time seemed to stop as a familiar humming sound reached his ears. Until now, it brought comfort and the warmth of well-earned pride. But in this new context, it flooded him with an anxious drive to action. He looked down at his brother and turned to the cell bars. The hum grew louder surrounding him, and was joined by rapid rhythmic scraping. He ran the numbers in his head. He ran them again. He ran them hundreds, thousands of times, but no added variable, no warped perspective could change the result. His heart hardened. "It's just a corpse now. He's gone," he thought. But despite himself, he pinched off a lock of Hector's hair and held it tight in his fist all the same. He knew himself well enough, and would allow one memento mori to avoid wallowing in regret. His body twisted as he kicked off the ground. Cracking the stone beneath, he drove each leg as hard as was optimal to gain maximum acceleration. Rubble exploded as the opposing walls on each side of Perturabo collapsed. A rapid chugging noise that would deafen a mortal filled the room before the grinders. Flanking Charybdis slammed through the cell. Cooling water meant to soothe the hot metal doused everything. Perturabo made them quick. Too quick. He slammed into the metal of the cell door with his shoulder, bending it. He turned, striking out with a backhand, fully dislodging the bars. He had nearly escaped the room before he felt the inertia stop with a full-body jerk. He began to twist. He was flipped to his back by the time he could turn his down and see it. His leg was caught. His armor was excellent, the best Olympia had ever seen, but between the force of the two Charybdis, it fared little better than pig iron. Thick steel teeth interlocked, caught, and compressed his sabaton. They pulled chunks off the metal while folding other parts inward. Before the teeth could crack open his foot, secondary nose-coned phalanges punctured and tore away at his greaves and scooped away his underlying flesh. He had nearly fully rotated before he found his opportunity and kicked at the base of the cell door. The base bent, but to Perturabo's fortune it held. With a high-shearing sound, he broke free, skidding headfirst into the opposite cell door. He dragged himself up on his good leg and hobbled down the hall. The grinding hum took on a high screeching pitch, interrupted by occasional deep thumps as the machines pushed enough to slide past each other. Perturabo knew of the catastrophic failure to come, and he vowed that would be the lesser of the calamities to fall on the house of Dammekos this day. Miltiades, now Optio Praetori of the Grand Fortress of Lokos, waited in the hallway outside of Dammekos's chamber. As requested, he stood guard in the West Wing with his entire elite company. His men stood firm when they felt the earthquake and received reports of the East Wing's collapse. Trained to be the last and best line of defense for their tyrant, their eyes did not move. But their minds began to slip. They began to wonder and wonder. The reason became obvious as the rapidity and volume of the screams beyond their hallway grew. His suspicion was confirmed as Perturabo slammed open the door while holding his Lieutenant Majoris by the neck in one hand and the lieutenant's spear-tipped weapon in the other. The two men guarding nearest to the door had no time to react as, without hesitation, Perturabo threw the lieutenant head-first into the man on the left. The trauma of the full-force skull-to-skull impact snapped their necks simultaneously. He followed that momentum to bring the spear down on the other man's armoured chest. The very same machine that Perturabo had retrieved for Caliphone had proven to be capable of crafting more than gorgeous gowns. With focused tinkering, it had mass-produced a nigh uncuttable, impact-resilient mesh Dammekos named the Aegis. It had proven invaluable in their conquest of other cities, but here, against this personification of the god's wrath, it only robbed his strike of its cutting potential. The spear tip crinkled and split the armour. It met the Aegis on the man's collarbone, and the mesh held where the bone beneath collapsed. The blade made it to the man's hips, before Perturabo pulled it from the gushing flesh sack that used to be the finest duelist in Lokos. Perturabo turned, and the men locked eyes. Miltiades did not see what the other men saw. Where their bowels liquefied in terror at the warrior mask of hate, he only saw the fulfillment of a promise made on the dirt road of a shepherd's hill. Dammekos finished pouring a second goblet of wine as Perturabo entered. He closed the heavy door to the bloody hall behind him. Dammekos wore nothing but his most ostentatious robes. He turned Perturabo with his hands open and asked, "I'd ask you what you are doing here, but the screams of my men bring poor portents of the answer, and I'm not sure I'd like to hear it. It's fitting that you play the fool now. It's only fair after you sneered behind my back as I danced for you, all the while you held my brother. I know what you have done. Did you not speak to your brother? I tried to ease his suffering for what was done to him." "Stop. This is pathetic. I've met Heracon. He has not half the guile to do any of this, not even quietly abducting someone. The dolt, he'd kill him outright. I smelt something was off the moment you gave your lazy excuse. I've witnessed Heracon and Caliphone at the feasts. There was no love lost between the two. Neither would care if the other was struck down by the gods themselves. If you lie again, at least make it believable, or you will lose what short time you have left." Dammekos's affable lightness evaporated, leaving only the murk below. He looked Perturabo up and down. His hair was caked with viscera and slicked back. His armour, while scored, pocked and covered in blood, was intact. That was except for his right leg, which was naked from the knee down where it tore raggedly. Although copious amounts of dry blood caked it, the chunks missing left it misshapen and twisted. So you say. But it is funny in a way. I acted with my mind, but my heart never believed it would stop you. I truly believed you divine and impervious to such physical attacks. But look at you now, lame. You proved me wrong in both ways. Those motley robes fit you. To think you kill me with my own creations." Dammekos turned and walked to a window and leaned with both hands on its edge. "This could all be forgotten. You marry Caliphone, and we can rule all of Olympia. We can make it up to your family 100 times over. What do you say?" He turned around to look at Perturabo. Closer, standing where he had a moment ago. He just shook his head, slowly. Dammekos sighed. He walked right up to Perturabo, his unflinching gaze staring down at him. "One last request, a final drink with me. Consider it the 13th task I never received." Dammekos turned and took the goblet and walked to the other end of the chamber to stare out the window again. A few seconds passed, and Perturabo took the drink in his hand. Hearing the cup move, Dammekos turned and raised his drink in salute and brought the cup to his lips. Perturabo did the same and drank deeply until the full goblet was empty. Dammekos's eyes never left the giant. He lowered his glass and said, "I am ready for my divine punishment." Perturabo took a step towards him, but his leg wobbled and fell out from under him. He tried to catch himself on his gnarled leg. but with a wet crack he slipped and caught himself on his hands. He looked up. His face showed the first signs of panic Dammekos had ever seen in him, as he began to grasp at his throat. Gasping and gurgling, he held his neck resting on an elbow before hitting the floor. The corners of Dammekos's mouth perk up with the hint of a smile. "Did you think I was unaware of your immunity to poison? I knew of at least 3 separate plots to poison you during the first feast. Yes, I knew. I suffered your insolence at every turn because I knew sooner or later you would either join me or fall from your hubris. It is the greatest tragedy of the gods. Speaking of, it is chimera venom. They say it is so potent it can lay low, even a god. It seems they were correct." He breathed deeply and looked up. "Before your ears give out, I want you to know this was not what I wished. Your brother? He was unintentional. My forefathers were fools for letting a ruler just abdicate. They should have known the trouble his line would eventually cause. His capture was purely practical, purely politic. If I had known you were related, I would have approached differently, but you play what the gods serve." Dammekos's smile was tight and wicked. "Oh, and what you offered. My divine eye left no secrets from me. Not the enemy's position, not your whereabouts. The Aegis may not have been much to you, but mothers across Lokos pray to it now more than the gods, as they know it will bring their sons home. And that Charybdis, oh, that Charybdis." He bit his lip and looked down his nose through smug eye slits. "It not only broke every fortification on Olympia, it broke you." He turned away and spoke out to the window. "If you had taken my offer, any of my offers, you, your brother, and the rest of your shit-covered family would have been fine. Could you imagine our ease of conquest? Can you imagine the legacy? A divine right so strong the gods sent you to lead my armies, marry my daughter, and hand me all of Olympia, one Olympia. If you were not so single-minded, we could have all gotten what we wanted. But here we are." With a self-satisfied smile, he raised his drink again, to the world, and threw it back. From the floor, Perturabo laughed. Dammekos whipped around. Perturabo laughed a miserable, humorless laugh as he rose. All the while, Dammekos's eyes began to redden as they widened. "Did you think I was unaware of the toxin? That I could not smell that vile brew from beyond the door? Yes, I've tasted more than my fair share of all manner of poison, gods. I swallowed 2 goblets just to prevent your courtly parasites from imbibing it. One of my more regretful actions. Not this, though. Oh, no. Killing you myself? I could only do it once. Why not let the viper taste of his own venom for a change? That death would last me a lifetime." Dammekos began to purple. Foam bubbled from the sides of his lips, and his hands involuntarily clawed at the sides of his neck. "Before you lose your hearing, I want you to know that I've thought on it, and your idea is a fine one. A unified Olympia would serve us all." Perturabo continued, but Dammekos's hearing had given out. His back had arched backward, his screams internal, dead to Perturabo, dead to the world and dead to his gods. Caliphone arrived at a different Lokos than she had known. The Grand Fortress had changed. Not demolished outright, as there was an artistry to its ancient bones, but it had been enormously expanded. Its beauty and function had grown in equal measure in so little time. The royal reception shocked but did not displease her. King Perturabo waited on the steps in a robe of yellow, with a black meander pattern lining its edge. Behind him flapped banners of the same color adorned with his chosen emblem, a skull crowned in a laurel wreath. Perturabo would adopt Dammekos's idea, unifying with Caliphone and conquering all of Olympia, not by the sword, but through diplomacy. Perturabo would look out to the stars beyond the stars only he could see, and knew that he, if not all of humanity, would one day face it and need to be ready.
A man plagued by sight, a paradox of vision. The universe around him a weave to unravel at the slightest tug. The universe beyond an unknowable, tantalizing canker. Buried deep within armor, near one of his hearts, this singularly capable individual keeps a memento mori. It is a reminder of who he is and why he fights. It is the fuel that burns his soul to a shining beacon of virtue. Perturabo, the philosopher king of a single world, stands on the bridge of a ship, awaiting the master of 1,000. The Emperor will reach out to that luminescence in Olympian orbit and recruit him to unify all mankind under a single banner. But for humanity to survive, they need more than one light in the warp.